the history of Taiwan and the history of its language. Now you'll see that it will relate naturally because people speak languages, okay? So I want you to think about this phrase. Language is the journey of the land and its people. So here we're going to show through this short history lesson this journey, and it helps you to understand the land, which is the island of Taiwan, and it helps you even better understand the people.
Good.
Let's see if we can make it stand. Can you get really close? So here's China, right? It's the big landmass, continent side. Then right off of China is a small leaf-shaped island called Taiwan. But before that, it was called Formosa. Even longer, it was known as Formosa. So it was named Formosa by the Portuguese, okay? There is a tobacco lookingness about Taiwan. It does look somewhat like a tobacco. And then, because it's an island that has high mountains, the plate under the sea actually made the island. It lifted it up. So there are mountain peaks as high as 13,000 feet. That's really high. The highest mountain in the U.S. is 14,000, what, 595 feet?
495.
Yes, but you know how large the U.S. is. The U.S. is huge, but the little island of Taiwan has some peaks that are just almost as high as the U.S. peaks. Okay, not as high as the Himalayas, which are 29,000. Okay, so and why I'm explaining this is because of the mountain, you have valleys. So this is like a cross-section of the island. So when you cross it, there's mountains and valleys and peaks. So, and some go like that, and some go like that. This is called surface area. So the more ups and downs you have, is there lots of space for people to live here? No, but if your land is like that, you get double the surface area for people to live on. You know, their little houses, the little tents. You could just, can you imagine if you have this going on here, 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 all the way up? What I'm saying is there's a lot of space on a tiny island like Formosa, Taiwan. So people can try to get along and live there, and visitors can come and they are welcome, okay? Because Taiwan actually has so much growth there, 3 seasons of, you could grow vegetables, rice, food, and plenty of vegetation so that animal life flourishes, bird life flourishes, okay? So it could house many people and many groups of people. If they don't fight, they can take over little sections and live there peacefully, okay? So this is what happened. History of Taiwan, history of Formosa. Oh, ship came. Tom, I think I need help drawing these Portuguese ships. Portuguese ships. maybe they're even larger masts. I don't know. But can you imagine?
Looks more like a junk.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying this is a huge Portuguese ship. Okay. And it's going around the world trading, picking up food and spices and bringing exotic things like animals and gold and jewelry. You know, they're huge ships. They store them and they keep going around. Then they came around the Pacific and saw Taiwan, and someone yelled out, some kind of pirate yelled out, Ilha Formosa! And that's Portuguese for beautiful island, because it is. Mountain peaks, greenery, beautiful island. And so that's how it became Formosa, because he said, Ilha Formosa. Okay? Ilha Formosa. How do you spell Ilha? Is that right? Ila. It's
I don't know in Portuguese.
yeah, so it's like I-L-A, beautiful Formosa Island. Okay? So I'm going to erase this because I don't, well, maybe I don't have to. So they landed there, left a few people, because some people like to just settle down. Oh, I'm so tired of being on the ship and this life. So wherever they go, they might leave some of the sailors, pirates, trade people on the island. And when they go there and trade with the people there, some might marry into the tribal people. Okay, so the tribal people looked more like this. Can you see this? They looked more like, they're called Negrito. They have dark skin and curly black hair, and they're small, and they don't wear much clothes. They don't need to. Okay, do you see that? So, and then the natives, they're called the natives. Okay, the natives eventually became more clothed, and they want their own style, and they have patterns in their clothes. So the next picture, do you see that? That's also a native. Okay, so I put under natives two types: the original Negrito, dark skin, and then later on the taller natives who had more textiles. They made their own clothes, and they had their own languages. So I just told you, say if your little village is over there, you would speak something different from a village over there. And then this village would speak something different. And this, do you see? So there were, I think they said hundreds of languages recorded there. Now, the language is the journey of the land and its people. So at this point, in the early days, before 1600s, before the Portuguese came, the languages were many, and they were called Austronesian languages. It's a group of languages that have no tone. It's not like Mandarin, it's not like Taiwanese, it's not like Japanese, not like English. The languages they spoke had no tone, and it's more like the native languages on the Philippines, because the Philippines are down here. They're all hopping and riding on boats going back and forth, so they're related. The natives of Taiwan are related to the natives of the Philippines. And they're all called Austronesian people. And you have that in your blood if you're Taiwanese. Okay, you may be mixed with other people, but your blood is native, therefore you're Austronesian. You have a question? My touch. Okay, so she's moving on, and we'll move on. After the Portuguese, Ilha Formosa, okay, the Dutch came along. Gosh, do you see the Dutch picture over there? And this is, and they were traders, and they used ships to get around. This is during the maritime powers. I'm going to draw the Dutch. The longer side. And they like to have huge collars. And then they have their sword slung along their side, because you gotta defend yourself. So swords were common. Okay, that's about it. Yep. So after the Portuguese came the Dutch. So they were here quite a long time. 38 years on Taiwan, but over here. I'm going to put a D here because this is basically where the Dutch landed. Okay? So the Portuguese just say Ilha Formosa from the east side, and the Dutch came around, or maybe they came this way, and they actually stayed there and built forts and made a living there. Okay? And they were the first to take the languages I just told you about, the hundreds of Austronesian languages. They took the one right in this place where they lived and a few that surround it, and they wrote it all out in alphabet. So it's called reducing the oral language into a written form. And you know why they had to do that? Because they wanted to buy land and they needed to write a contract. They couldn't just shake a hand of a native. They wanted it in a contract so it's legal. Okay? So that when they owned the land, they could sell it to someone and they write inside their name and it's legal. So you need to have writing ability to document your purchases and your other business transactions. Okay? Because you could end up arguing, well, you said this and you said that. No, we wrote it down and this is it. So the language was there. Then the writing came from foreigners because they already knew how to write. The Dutch already had written their language. They even had printed their works. They had printing press there in Europe. Okay, so is it good to have visitors? Visitors, because they bring in something to each culture. Okay, it was very hard for the Dutch to live there because there were other people who wanted the same area because this is a nice harbor for ships to go in. So that's the next one you were asking about. Let's try to draw the next group of people who came. Oh gosh. Okay, so these are pirates that are next, and they also brandish a sword. Okay. His name, pirates sail the seas, okay, and they steal, and but this guy came from China because he didn't like the dynasty, the rulers then, so he took off on a boat and decided to occupy Taiwan. But guess who he met? This guy called Can you spell that, please?
S-I-N-G-A.
Okay, so I'll try to pronounce
He met
that. Nope, he was from China, and he was a pirate from China. Okay, so he wanted to probably be a king of Taiwan, but he met the Dutch there. And he's a pirate, so where does he want to land his boat?
In the harbor.
Yes, where the Dutch were. Exactly. Smart. So what does this, he's called a Han person. Han is Chinese, okay. What does he have to do to the Dutch?
Fight.
Yes, and he won. So the Dutch, after 38 years, had to leave the harbor because they got kicked out.
How many Dutch were there?
There were, it's called a colony, so they were there for 38 years. I don't have the numbers, but it was a colony, meaning if you go there in Tainan, where the fort is, you'll see that there were enough to have a garrison, meaning a fort, and all the soldiers, and some of the wives, schools. For 38 years, they brought in businesses, they had a thriving city. But the thriving city is only because there was a thriving village of native people. Oh, sorry, I didn't even draw the natives. But you understand, there were thriving, intelligent natives. I'm going to just put their headband on. As you can tell, the way I drew it, their clothes is quite fancy, these natives. And probably because they were also influenced by visitors. And this is their artistic, decorative way. And natives tend to be artistic, decorative, and musical, I don't want to stereotype, not everyone is musical, but they are. They're very musical and good farmers. Yes, but I'm trying to draw really quickly. So this is the native, okay? And it's okay if they don't want to wear clothes, you know, go back to, because they're farmers and they're out in the wild and they're cutting down trees and picking plants. You don't need all this fancy clothes, but I just wanted to represent that not all natives look half naked. When they need to, they'll put on their good clothes. And what I'm trying to do is saying, let's break the stereotype. Natives don't all look like half clothes. But we see in our history books a lot of stereotypes because we're just trying to show the little bit we know. Okay? But instead we say, oh, that's all we know, so everyone was like that. But that's not true. Okay? So I would say the people up in the mountains, it was freezing cold there, they would have to wear clothes, maybe even furs. And the people down in the valleys over here, they probably didn't wear as thick clothes. Why would you? It's not practical. People are smart. They wear what is suited to survival. Yes, Tom?
Oh, I was going to ask you earlier, what was the main Dutch settlement at?
Oh, it was Tainan. That's why I put it here. Yeah, it's on the west side and because of the harbor.
Yeah.
And because they came in ships. Okay. Now the Dutch and the the Spanish came up here. Now, please forgive me. Here's P, Portuguese, Dutch, Spanish, French, English. They all came later. And they liked these two ports because they were the best, deepest harbors. And their ships could get in and out. Okay, but because of that, where was most of the fighting? In the North Harbor and southwest. Let's just call it the Southwest Harbor because it wasn't quite on the south. It's the Southwest, the West Harbor. How's that? Okay, so the fighting happens where people want to have their ships and good trading already set up. Was it to his credit that he got so wealthy and got the island? No, people previous had built up Taiwan. Yes?
The Portuguese are lucky because no one goes there.
Where?
The Portuguese.
The Portuguese are lucky, yes, but there's a lot of why people don't go there is because there's no harbor really there, and it's so beautiful because the cliffs just fall right into the ocean, and because of that there's not many people who live there, and it stays about the same. It's beautiful and it's dangerous to live there because the cliffs will break off and you'll fall. And the natives there have survived the longest. Hi, come on in. The natives here have survived the longest, meaning their language did not journey to change as fast as the people who lived on the west side, where there was more influence. Yes?
The mountains aren't right in the center of Taiwan. They're toward the east side.
Yeah.
So there's more flat land along the west coast.
Yeah, for farming.
And the mountains spill into the ocean very quickly on the east side.
It's called shear. They just cut and drop right in.
So there's not much of a shelf there, of the coastal shelf.
That's a good point.
On the east side.
So the mountains are sheer and they drop off, and they're more on the east side. And that's where I like to go and visit to see the old what these people knew, what these saw, and these saw. You know.
There's no video today?
No, we're done with the cartoons. I'll find some more later, okay? Did you have a question, Melissa?
So, like, right now, China and Taiwan speak Mandarin.
Yes.
So, you were saying that, so did Koxing, like, kind of bring the Chinese to Formosa?
Good insight. That's exactly what happened. John, are we done?
No. I'm recording.
Okay. That's exactly what happened.
Keep on
you
going.
both seem to be ahead of me because you are listening and you are thinking ahead. So the language did not change much. Yeah, you could find some Portuguese word. Yeah, you could find a lot of Dutch words. In fact, the Dutch taught a lot of the natives how to read and write their own language. And guess what they also wanted? the natives said, we want to learn Dutch too. So they started learning Dutch. And then I did not include the Spanish, excuse me, the French, the English. These are all maritime powers, meaning they all know how to travel the world in ships and do business, yes. But when he came, and he was a powerful pirate, he actually kicked out the Dutch. And he occupied this whole island, and when he did this, all the other people who were just like him, who were unhappy with the rulers of China, they started coming over by plane, by train, no, by boat. Just by boat they would come over, and maybe a ship if they hopped onto one of the trading ships that came to Shanghai or to Hong Kong, okay, because those are big ports back then.
How far is it?
They couldn't really swim. I think it's 150 miles. I don't think they could.
About 90.
Oh, I thought it was about 150. But it depends on where you're trying to go to, too.
And there are some islands.
And there are a few islands here, that's true. So I'm not sure if anyone has recorded someone swimming all the way across. But the point is, if there's no plane, can you like travel really quickly with all these? No. So I'm going to say for about 200 years. What is the date?
You got 1818 on here, I think.
1675.
Okay, so 1885 is 1895 is when the other big power came and changed the landscape and the language. Okay, so we're going through the journey through the land. If you know how the language changed, you know about the people who arrived in Taiwan. Remember I told you Taiwan is a history of people coming, going, staying, leaving. Okay, but they always leave something. Is the language. It takes a while for the words that are embraced by the language to go away. And so the native languages started, if they want to do business with the Dutch, they have to start incorporating the Dutch language, right? If they want to do a successful business. Likewise, if they want to do business with a Han Chinese person, and I'm not sure what he spoke, but it wasn't Mandarin.
No, because that was up
No. You know how many languages there are, so wherever Koxing Ga came, he brought his language, and all the pirates that he picked up along the way, they brought their languages, okay? So finally, here comes the Chinese language influencing Taiwan. So the native languages are now influenced by Chinese languages, but they were already, before that, influenced by the Dutch language, okay? And other European, like Formosa, Formosa, that's Portuguese, yes?
What about this?
Yes. She's moving me along very well so I don't waste time. Okay, so do you see how that's like over 200 years? But they didn't come wildly, tons of people coming, just because they could die in malaria-infested lands, okay? And plus, they were fighting going on, head hunting. And it's not always the natives who headhunted. The Chinese also cut people's head off for punishment, okay? So they were kind of violent here, because you were saying they're fighting, right? So does everyone want to leave their home village and this pretty much safe to go to a wild island? Because it was still considered wild. You could get sick with malaria, okay? And other diseases, tropical diseases. You know the spiders are huge, the cockroaches are huge. There's lots of diseases in humid climates because the bacteria love it, right? And you get a cut, you can die. Infection, okay? So it's a risk. It's a risk for everyone to come to Taiwan at that time, and that's fine. Okay, if you could survive, you have land, you have 3 crops. It's worthwhile if you're starving here to come over there. If you're unhappy here because your taxes are so high you can't make a living, you would be like Koxing Ga. You're so unhappy, you're gonna take off and go to the next best place nearby, okay? So the language started to change, and 200 years worth, but it still doesn't belong to China. They occupy this city over here, a city over there, but this and the mountain range all belong to the natives still, because you could tell their languages are still strong. There's still hundreds of them. They haven't been wiped out, okay? So they produce the influence, and they're very hardworking too, and they may mix with the natives, and that will end over here, okay? Do you want to go on to the Japanese? I'm going to go on to the Japanese.
How did that pirate get kicked out?
Oh, sorry. This pirate died after a year, and his son took over.
It wasn't fun.
His son was a pirate too, but he was a pirate of the land because his dad already landed, and he became the ruler of the area that was won over. Yes, Melissa.
So when he was like a pirate, did he like just steal from people? Or?
No. You know, pirates, when they settle, they are also traders. They trade and do business. But what I read from his story was he wasn't like a wild man in China. He was just very upset with the rulers. It's called dynasty back then. And there was wars going on. There was no stability. You could think this is your land. It's been your land for generations. Your great-grandfather lived. And then a new dynasty comes over and says, pay us for it. Or, get out. My general wants it. You know, so he's very upset. He decides to be a pirate out of desperation. And pirates can settle down and be a ruler, and he did. He settled down and became a ruler. Unfortunately, he died after 1 year. But fortunately for his son started a new life there, and he became a ruler, and he spoke a language and welcomed others from China over. Because if they don't have greater numbers of their own kind, the natives will kick them out. Because the natives at this point realize these visitors are here to stay, and they're taking our best farmland. Not the best land, but there's an ease about farming on a flat plain than on the mountain, okay? So this is fertile farmland, because every time there's a typhoon, it washes down the vegetations from the mountain and puts down a layer of very rich dirt that grows food very well. And what else can you do here to survive?
Fish?
Yeah, so it's a nice area to live in. And in the mountains was the disease called malaria from the mosquitoes. Okay, but for some reason the natives who are there, they're immune to it. Okay, so maybe that was built in so that they could still stay on the island without getting kicked out by basically ruthless business people. These are all pretty much ruthless. They come in and then they take over. Okay, because they weren't born in the land. Their forefathers weren't there, so they don't really care for it. They're temporarily, life is short, take as much as you want. And that's the mentality at that time. It was allowed. It's even going on today. Okay, so who's next? Let's go to the Imperial Japanese. The Japanese did have good military structure and organization, right? And I didn't know what they really looked like, so when you don't know and you want to respectfully draw somebody, you just do sticks. Okay? Alright, so I said this was the imperial because they came in the name of the emperor.
Which emperor?
From Japan. They had their own country, but they wanted Taiwan as well. And the Japanese live up here in the cold land. Okay, it's cold, and they like the resources, meaning all the food and the wood, the oil, the mines. And guess what they were good at?
Fighting?
Getting all of that. Oh, they were good at fighting too. They fought and kicked out not him, he was already dead. They kicked out, well, I shouldn't say they kicked out, they just took over the island.
Yeah, they fought the
They
Chinese.
fought the Chinese because Japan and China fought, and China lost, and the Japanese said, well, Japan was all over here. Okay, they said, well, since you lost, we want to make sure that you don't say you own Taiwan. We want it, and China says, okay, you can have it.
Yeah.
But the problem was, they only had a few of the villages on the west side. But by then, history was, if you say you had it and you start exchanging money with the English and the other Europeans and the Americans, then they all recognize each other. They don't recognize the native people, okay? So the problem with Japan saying, and they're imperial at this time, great powers work with great powers, and little powers, like the native people, they're not organized, they don't have a king to speak for them. They said, what? You own us? And they said, and they refused, they rebelled. So for all the years the imperial Japanese were there, they're constantly trying to, I told you they were good at collecting the resources, so they put in train tracks there to get to the mines, to get to the forest, to get to the gold, to get to this and that, okay? They were always trying to put down the revolts because the native people were, this is our land, and they would fight, and so the imperial Japanese were good at fighting, and they were good at putting down the native people from uprising, and because the native people, they don't like to be controlled and have to pay taxes to, they're not even their kings, they're not even the people of Taiwan, they're outsiders. They're outsiders. These are kind of outsiders. Well, they were. These are outsiders. These were outsiders, but these were not, because they came by boat and they were welcome, just like all the villages. And they took a spot where no one else was, and they grew a family there, and then a village. So and I just drew all the space that Taiwan has. They could fight, but they didn't really fight, because there's enough space to keep moving around, okay? So there's villages all over Taiwan and tons of languages. But
How long did the Japanese imperial
okay, can you, okay, I know it's 50 years, so I'm just going to write you the dates so you know that this follows history. World War 45, World War II is when and just because the Japanese lost the big battles going on in China, and they were allies of Hitler and the European allies. Because they lost in 1945, they had to give up Taiwan. But the Taiwanese people thought, okay, go, but let us have our own island back, okay? But because they are part of the great big powers, Taiwan became like a gift or a reward to give to a nation. And so it was, eventually went to China because China lost the war there and they had nowhere to go. And where did they go? The soldiers, yeah, the soldiers who lost China because they had a divorce, like a family split. Let's just say the losers went to Taiwan for a while, hoping to go back to China to beat their enemies and to take over China. But they never did. They stayed there, and therefore we have the people who came over after the war was the Chinese. And I call them Mandarin Chinese because you could appreciate your heritage because, let's see, when I draw these things, I'm trying to draw something that represents something good about them, okay? So here is a book. Sorry, just slow down. Here's a book, many pages. And here's a hoe. And they're hardworking. fields. They're very hardworking people. And I tried to look up what they look like, and I think they kind of dress like that. So, so I said I tried to represent what they're like, characteristic-wise. The Chinese that came over, because even though they lost the war, they had to escape to save their own lives. They came to Taiwan. They were hardworking, they were good at farming, and they were good at studying. Okay? So that benefited Taiwan. Before that, there was also... I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
There was... What do you call the Japanese when I describe them? What would you describe them as? Orderly, capable, technology savvy, because they could build railroads and mines. So that influenced Taiwan, so they got the benefit of all that. This gave them more people to mix with, okay? I'm not sure what he did that was that, but people were just living at that time on the island. And these people gave them writing, okay, the Dutch gave them writing and contracts, and these people pointed out it's a beautiful island and drew more people to visit and trade. And these people are the natives, and they still sing the songs of the land, of the sky, of the ocean, the water. They're the music, they're the heart and soul of Taiwan. Okay? So we are all the heart and soul of Taiwan. We are all welcoming. We are all wanting to record and write down and value the history of Taiwan. They did, I would say. And Koshingang, you want to go to Taiwan and start a new life, right? You have immigrants, and you want an orderly life and maintain order and take care of the land and the people so that it's there for each generation. And then you want to be hardworking, self-reliant, studious. All that benefits the island of Taiwan. Is that a good history? Let's read it. Language is the journey of the land and its people. So where did Taiwanese come in? Probably here is when the Taiwanese language came. And the Japanese language came to Taiwan during this time, and during the Imperial Japanese time. And the Mandarin, Chinese.
20th century.
Yeah. So do you see how there's a journey of languages going on? Yeah. And they all still exist except these. You could find words in the vocabulary here and there in the native tongue and in Taiwanese, and maybe even in Mandarin. But basically this is still there only because of the 20th century. But this is gone, and the forts are still named Santiago. So that is from the Spanish. So the fort in the north is Santiago. The fort in the south is called Provincia, and that is Dutch. So you still, I'm not making this up. Archaeology and just visiting there, as a visitor, will show you all this existed there. And it's just a journey of the land and its people. I also have an easier history to remember Taiwan by. This is like the scholarly history that you would read in books. But basically, I have a story here that uses an object that will help you remember Taiwan, okay? So I'm going to do it in English. Once upon a time, a ship was out in the ocean. It saw an island, and it was headed toward it. It was a beautiful island. But it was in a storm, because this island has regular typhoons, strong winds and rains. A typhoon hit, and the ship was getting out of control, and there was a rock ahead, and the captain says, "Back, back," but it was too late, and it hit the island. See the islands here, with the rocks. And one piece of the ship broke off, and then the captain called, "Back, back," and the ship went back, back. But there was another rock ship broke off. Then, to make matters worse, there was lightning in the sky and it hit the mast. And the mast, the top of the ship, broke off. Everyone said, "Gyumya, gyumya," which means, "Help, save my life." And as it was sinking and sinking and sinking, it was too late. The next morning, some little canoes came out, the natives, the villagers, and they happened to be searching around the wreckage. You know, wreckage tends to go up on the beaches. And they were searching and searching, and they heard about the shipwreck, and they did want to try to save any survivors. But by the end of the day, all they could find was the captain's t-shirt. So what did you learn from that little story about Taiwan?
How a ship got to it.
Yes, ships get to Taiwan. That's how people get there. But what else did you learn about Taiwan's conditions?
Weather.
Yes, dangerous weather, typhoons. What did you want to say? What? Natives live there. Excellent.
Unpredictable.
It's unpredictable. Some people survive, some people don't. Okay? So basically, that is the history of Taiwan. People come and go, and there are elements that you will encounter, like the dangerous weather, maybe some natives not wanting you to be there, so they'll fight off, but some help may come too. So if you think about the history of Taiwan, isn't this a little easier? Because we don't always have to be so political. Life on the island is such, okay?